Greetings, intrepid adventurers. I am Whisper. Welcome back. Today, we're beginning the long, arduous journey of making my book Amaranthin into a comic. Well, what I have written of the book anyway. I plan to dissect what I've written, rework the plot and scenes, transcribe it into a comic, and complete the entirety of the story. However, there's lots to be done before the comic can actually begin to take form. Character sheets need to be drawn, a script needs to be written, then there's storyboarding and gathering references, not to mention planning settings and doing research. Above all, actually planning the story itself, the most important part. My goal is to take you through each and every step with me. I'm so excited to go on this journey. I remember in middle school when I got into drawing. My aunt and cousin gave me a book full of blank comic book templates. It ignited my love of comics, and I began to read manga once I got a little older and into anime. It's been my dream to make a comic traditionally. For the sake of my sanity and lack of color theory and shading proficiency, I am aiming to make a black and white manga. I already have my pens and markers chosen, the leader manga paper, and a blue pencil on standby. I could use a longer ruler, but at least those are easy to come by. The plan is to draw everything out that I can on paper, and then scan it into my iPad for cleanup and lettering in Procreate. The goal for today is to come up with a plan of attack, as well as start the journey. The way I see it, step 1 is figuring out what I want out of my story. Amaranthin is supposed to be something of a darker tale, leaning towards horror or thriller. It involves folklore and mythology, along with a touch of romance. There are supernatural elements, such as immortals and magic users. Visually, I want heavy shadows and darker tones. It should be moody and atmospheric, mysterious, like anything could be peering at you from the darkness. There's a couple playlists I listen to when I work on this story in particular that I'll link below. I'm aiming to make my story look how the music feels. Heavy, melancholy, dark skies, barren gardens, leering statues and crying birds. Next, I want to take a look at the synopsis. I tried my best to write a better one, which is difficult when it's not my most practiced skill. However, I'm going to use it to lay out expectations both of myself and of my story. My thinking is that if I read this on the back of a book at the store, would I pick it up? What type of story would I expect out of it? And does what I currently have written meet those standards? What sort of events would I anticipate happening? And what type of feeling should I come away with at the end? Before we get into that, there's a few things you should know about my book. Firstly, my idea for the book is about what happens in the after. What happens to the characters when the story ends? When you finally turn the last page and the series is done? What are their lives like after that? When the secret has already been discovered? When someone's worldview was already altered in an irrevocable way? When someone else's self was changed so eternally? When the foes coming between them have already been vanquished and the lovers have settled into their happily ever after? What happens then? How do their lives continue? I created the timeline for the story and its purpose with that in mind. My main theme is settled in remembrance, looking at the darkness in your past so that it can help you through your future, guiding you to the light. That way you don't get swallowed up again. The second, and honestly more embarrassing fact, is that the book is based off of a Scotland fanfiction I wrote about a page of about 10 years ago. It was the days before Scotland was canonical in the Italia series, so we all speculated what he would look like, what he acted like. I always did like the non-canonical characters. First Alistair Kirkland, also known as Scotland, and then the second players when they were introduced, but that was a long time ago. The would-be Alistair Kirkland is not far removed from the character, but there are times I know the roots still glimmer through. In the end, I liked the idea I brainstormed for the fanfiction so much that I decided to adapt it into a book. though, it looked different in those early days. Admittedly, I forgot about both the fanfiction and the story derived from it for a while. There were times I thought finally on it. It hung in the back of my mind. So, when I wanted to get back into writing, I hunted out my drafts. Then, I decided I could do it better. By then, I discovered I liked building a world where all the folklore was real, and so were the myths and legends, whether or not the people in the world actually knew they were. Now, Amaranthin is one of my babies, one of the stories stuck in my brain, begging for life, begging for air, begging to finally be finished. Maybe I'll find the original stories one day and share them with you. For now, here's the synopsis for the story as it currently stands. For all intents and purposes, the story you're about to read has already ended. The girl's life has already been changed irrevocably by an inciting incident. She has already fallen in love with a man she should not have. They have already gotten together and fought forces that wish to separate them. They have already had their happy ending. But what comes after, when the story ends and the last page is read? How does their life continue? Do they stay happy? Or is there some miserable fate awaiting them, far beyond the final words? The letters always came with no recipient and no return to sender. They simply appeared in mother-of-pearl envelopes with their shining golden seals. They were unmistakable and never to be ignored. Lyra Lovelace used to look forward to those letters. Now they sit in a box in the back of her closet collecting dust. For nearly 3 years, Lyra has made sure to keep herself carefully tucked away in her own little bubble, slowly rebuilding her life after abandoning her future abroad. She never wanted, much less expected, to have another of those beautiful envelopes sent to her, until one materialized in her mailbox one fateful morning. A single letter is all it takes to change everything. Scotland is the last place Lyra ever thought she'd be again. She spent 7 long years there and thought she had finally escaped that life for good. Yet after accepting a wedding invitation from her best friend, and very nearly sister-in-law Blythe Sinclair, Lyra quickly ends up right back in the heart of it all. Steeped in her past, she finds herself drowning in everything she'd locked away in her mind. From the moment she sets foot on Scottish soil, Lyra is plagued by her memories. The dark secrets discovered, the love she lost, the life she left behind. Once again she finds herself swept up by the gorgeous dark allure of the immortal world, a society that evolved alongside us in the recesses of history, one that remains hidden amongst our own. Once settled in her temporary residence at the Sinclair estate for her 6-month stay, Lyra is haunted by the ghost of her wayward romance. She's plagued by the echoes of a different lifetime. However, she soon finds she's being hunted by more than just memories. Voices mumble from the dark, growling stalks her through the corridors. Seelie come to her as warning, howling her death. And she finds herself victim of something unseen. With Blythe's wedding quickly approaching and the manor's protective wards potentially compromised, things don't seem like they could be any worse. Until Alcott Sinclair, Lyra's ex-fiancé, who she left in the middle of the night those years ago, unexpectedly returns to the family estate. He's just as she remembers, beautiful, charming, and a bit mischievous. However, his intense mood swings are worse than ever. He's forgetting things, arguing with anyone who utters word to him, not to mention his confusing attitude towards Lyra's presence. 1 second proclaiming he's still in love, the next cursing her for ever setting foot in grounds. No one has any explanation as to his strange behavior. It isn't long before Lyra discovers there's more at stake than just her sanity, or her heart. On top of the shadow figure she's started to see stalking around the manor, events centuries in the making begin coming to fruition. Truths bubble to the surface, prophecies are foretold, and the real reason behind Alcott's sporadic, cold behavior couldn't come as a more foreboding omen. With the clock running down, Lyra starts to wonder if she'll make it out alive, or if the past should have just stayed a box in her closet. As it stands, the story I have written doesn't stand up to the expectations I would have after reading this. I want a story that matches the visuals, dark, brooding, moody, ancient and gothic, crumbling walls and drafty estates, hidden secrets that are better left buried but always end up seeing the light of day again, full of thrills and suspense and mystery. The first true draft of this version is very far from what I want it to be. I'll probably take the elements from this, but rework the entire thing. Make the scenes more interesting, more of what I'm looking for. I'll look back through the journals I've been using to write Amaranthin and see what I can find. Maybe I'll find a lost idea that's the key I've been looking for. I'm planning on writing Amaranthin to be arc-driven, the way anime and manga usually are. I think it would be useful to drive forward the A and B plot narratives in the way that I want. I'm not great at plotting. I usually think of scenes individually and then work on connecting them that way. I'm very much a pantser when it comes to writing. Even in drawing comics, a lot of things come to me as I'm sketching out the story. I need to stop thinking of it all as book 1 and book 2, instead see them as a singular flowing narrative that takes place over multiple arcs. With that in mind, I've taken to breaking down the process into the remaining steps. Step 2. Create character sheets for the important characters we'll be seeing a lot. Step 3. Dissecting the current story, figuring out what to keep, what I like, what I don't, and what to add. 4. Outlining the story arcs. 5. Outlining the chapters. Step 6. Scripting and storyboarding, chapter by chapter. And then Step 7. Sketching out the pages. Step 8. Drawing the covers. Step 9. Actually drawing the pages. And finally 10. Scan and clean up. It feels as though I've added too many steps, or maybe I'm missing a few. I'm sure as we build chapter by chapter that the flow will come more easily and naturally. Some steps can even be taken out, such as creating character reference sheets. This journey is a long time in the making, but I'm glad this is the book I decided to do it with. With all that said, I think that completes step 1. If you have any suggestions, please leave them down below. I hope I get to see you in the next one. Until then, keep dreaming, and farewell.